Take you to another miracle in the Bible in Mark chapter number 10. Mark chapter number 10. I want to talk to you today about lessons that I learned from a blind man. This is the story of Blind Bartimaeus. Many of you are very familiar with it. And so I want you to get a pen and paper. I want you to write some things down because I do believe that God is wanting to do miraculous things within your life. It may not be a physical blindness. It may be a spiritual blindness. It may be a need that you have. Or whatever that may be, I'm telling you, God is still working miracles in our lives today. Let me read the story. Mark chapter 10, beginning in verse number 46. Then they came to Jericho. The they here is Jesus and the disciples. Then they came to Jericho as Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city. A blind man, Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called to the blind man, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you." Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked. The blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see." "Go," said Jesus, "your faith has healed you." Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. So in that day, because they didn't have any form of public assistance, if you will, the only way for people with disabilities that didn't have no way of earning a living, and this man fell in that category because of his blindness, is they would sit by the gates of the city where people would come and go. Jericho, as you know, had been a walled city, and every city had these gates that people would come and go. And so they would sit there at these gates, at these entryways, and there, as people would come and go, they would beg alms, they would ask for money. It's the only way that they had. But this day was going to be different for blind Bartimaeus because he had heard something. He had heard that Jesus was coming his way, and that the miracle worker was passing by. And can I give you good news today? Jesus is in the house today. Jesus is passing by today. I'm going to give you 8 things. You're going to write these 8 things down. 8 lessons. And I know that scares you when that preacher says he's got 8 points to a message. That scares you real quick. But now I'm just going to give you these things real quick, so you're going to write them down. Number 1, blind Bartimaeus knew that he had a problem. He knew that he had, well, that seems pretty simple. No, let me tell you, we live in a day and age where people will deny their problems or they'll justify their problems. I'm going to say it one more time. We live in a day where people are in denial of their problems. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem. Or they'll try to justify their problem. Well, I'm this way because somebody else do it. Friends, you can deny your problem and you can try to excuse your problem, but that is not going to stop your problem from happening. How many know someone who needs to hear this message? Are they sitting? Don't you even dare raise your hand. We need to learn to admit that we've got a problem. That's how simple that is. You'll be surprised how many people that I deal with on a regular basis that say, I've got this, I've got that, but they're never willing to admit that they are the problem. Until you admit you have a problem, you're never going to solve it. I said, until you admit you've got a problem, you are never going to solve it. So blind Bartimaeus, it's my dentures that are slipping. Blind Bartimaeus knew that he had a problem. Number 2, blind Bartimaeus wanted to do something about his problem. It says, when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout. Now think about this. When he heard, now he couldn't see because he's blind. He couldn't see, but he could hear. If we're not careful, we'll always focus on what we don't have. And can I just give you a word? Stop focusing on what you don't have. Because let me tell you, what you don't have, here's great revelation. Are you ready for this? What you don't have, this will blow your mind. Now, some of you never thought about this. What you don't have, you don't have. What great truth just emits from this podium. What you don't have, you don't have. You need to first start with what you've got. God will use what you've got. What can God do with what I've got? Well, I don't have $1 million. Well, what do you have? I'm not able to. What are you able to do? Well, I can't come every night. Well, can you come one night? Start with what you've got. This man couldn't see, but he said, you know what I can hear? When he heard that it was Jesus coming by, what did he do? He cried out. He cried out. Some are willing to sit in their problems instead of crying out for help for the problem. Well, I know I got a problem. Then what are you doing at? You must be willing to do something about it. The Bible says you have not because you ask not. I know I should be. I know I got. I know. Then what are you doing about it? And so he cried out toward it. So he knew he had a problem. He wanted to do something about his problem. Number 3, blind Bartimaeus knew Jesus could help him. He knew that Jesus could help him because when he began to shout, verse 47, he said, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Now, when he cried, Jesus, Son of David, that wasn't just any title because his name was Jesus. No, when he referred to him as the Son of David, that is a reference to Jesus being the Messiah. So now he's recognizing who Jesus is. The one that they had been looking for, the one that had been promised them, the one that had been prophesied, the miracle worker, the Son of God. So he's not just saying you're a good teacher, you're a good rabbi, you're not just a prophet, you're not just a miracle worker. They had seen all that happen before. He said, no, Jesus, I know who you are. You are the Messiah. You are the Son of God that has come. Jesus is not one of the answers. Jesus is the answer. When are we going to realize that? When are we going to realize that Jesus is the answer? We've tried all the wrong answers. How many of you ever tried some wrong answers? I'm not talking about your spouse. That's not what I'm talking about. We've all tried the wrong thing. You'd think we could figure it out by now. I've been doing it my way. I've been doing it my way. I've been doing it my way. And how's that working for you? He cried out, have mercy on me. God, have mercy. In other words, he knew that he didn't deserve it. He knew he didn't deserve it. See, some people are trying to cut deals with God. God, if you'll do that, I'll do this. I'll put this on the table. What are you going to put on the table? You know, I just had this flash of this old movie, and I can't even think of the name of it. It was it Burt Reynolds? What was the movie? Oh, come on, old folks, help me here. Now, I didn't just say name out Burt Reynolds' movie, Smokey and the Bandit. No. What was the movie where he let me see if I get the story right. He thought he had a terminal disease, and he started swimming out of the ocean. He's basically going to commit suicide. Was that Burt Reynolds? Was that the end? Was that the name of it? I can't think of the name of it. But anyway, he swims out there, and then he realized, I don't want to do this. But he's just going to swim out as far as he could. He started turning around, and he realized he didn't have it. So he starts making deals with God. Oh, God, if you'll just get me back to the shore, I'll live for, I'll do all this, I'll do everything, I'll give everything. And oh, yeah. And as he got closer to the shore and he thought he was going to make it, suddenly it's like, well, I'll be at church every other Sunday. Well, I'll give 5% instead of 10%. And as he got better, his deals got worse. Now, don't you laugh at that, because I know many of you have cut deals with God. You've negotiated with God. God is not in the deal-cutting business, friends. Let me tell you right now. What you need from God is not a deal. You need mercy from God. We don't deserve it. All of our righteousness is filthy rag, and we just need to come and God say, God, I ain't making no deal with you. I'm throwing all in. I'm all in. This is all I got, and I'm giving everything I got. I need your mercy, because you recognize who Jesus is. So blind Bartimaeus knew he had a problem. He wanted to do something about that problem. He knew that Jesus could help him. Number 4, blind Bartimaeus did not let anyone stop him. He didn't let anybody stop him. It says in verse 48, many rebuked him and told him to be quiet. But he shouted all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. They told him to be quiet, quiet, quiet. Don't bother the master. Quiet. But he didn't let that stop him. So here's my question to you today. Who are you listening to? Who is it that you are listening to that is telling you don't go to church? You don't need to pray. You don't need to do that. That's not going to do any good. So just be quiet, sit down there, and just set in your problem. And some of you have had friends, some of you have had loved ones, some of you have people that you think are close to you, and they're giving you bad advice. Who are you going to listen to? Who's standing between you and the miracle that God wants to do in your life? Because I'll tell you right now, no one can stop you from being what God would have you to be except you. Oh, and let me just add another thing. Stop blaming others for why you're not blessed. God didn't intend for you to be the victim. He intended for you to be victorious. And you can sit there and let people stop you and let people talk you out of it and let people lead you down the wrong pathway and tell you why it can't be done. I'm telling you, when they tell you to stop, when they tell you to quit seeking God, when they tell you to stop going to church, when they tell you to stop being faithful, then I tell you, you need to turn around to them and say, I'm just going to do it even more. You tell me not to go to church, I'm staying for both services then. I'll just show you. Tell me not to give, I'm going to double my giving this week. Who are you listening to? If he had listened to those folks, he wouldn't have got his miracle. So he knew he had a problem. He wanted to do something about his problem. He knew Jesus could help his problem, and he didn't let anybody stop him. Number 5. Blind Bartimaeus came when Jesus called him. Look at verse number 49. Jesus stopped and said, call him. So they called to him. I like what they said. They said, cheer up. Everybody say, cheer up. Cheer up. Come on, say, cheer up. Cheer up. Some of y'all, I think your face would crack if you smile. I think it'd break off. I'll get in trouble. I'm not going to say that. Cheer up, on your feet. He's calling you. Can I just give you good gospel news today? Jesus stopped when he heard blind Bartimaeus cry. When blind Bartimaeus cried out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. What was the response of Jesus? He stopped. Well, Jesus never stops by me. Maybe it's because you're not calling out to him. Maybe you're not recognizing him as the only one that can meet your need. Maybe you're not crying out for mercy. You're trying to cut a deal. He ain't interested in cutting a deal with you. But when you will cry out to him out of the sincerity of your problem, recognizing he is the only answer, you've tried it your way and no other way is going to work, and you realize I need mercy, when you call out in those types of feelings and emotion, Jesus stops because he hears you when you cry out to him. Oh, but hang on. He didn't just stop because he heard. He stopped and he called back to him. I wanted to get up and preach this while they were singing that today. I cried to the Lord. He heard me and he answered me. Blind Bartimaeus is the illustration of that. Blind Bartimaeus is there and he cried out, no, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus heard him. He stopped and he called to him. He answered him. I'm telling you, if you'll listen today, Jesus is answering you. He's calling to you. You need to cheer up. Yeah, but you don't know what I'm going through. You don't know what the emotion, what I'm facing, everything. Listen, I'm not belittling your problems. Some of you are facing some great problems in your life right now. Some of you are facing some situations from, like Nate mentioned today, you're facing financial problems. You're facing physical problems. You need a healing in your body. You're literally in pain. Some of you are facing relationship problems, everything. You're going through it. And Pastor, you're telling me to cheer up? Let me tell you right now, the joy of the Lord is our strength. And even in the midst of your problem, even in the midst of your circumstance, even in the darkest of your hour, it is not the circumstances that are around me. It is not the darkness around me. It's the light that is within me that shines, that expels the darkness. I need to cheer up. I need to say, I know in whom I believe. I know he is able. And that's why the disciples turned to him. Now, wait a minute. This is so funny. It was these same guys that were saying, be quiet a moment ago. And now they're saying, oh, cheer up. He's calling to you. I just say that to let you know, you've got to quit going by the emotions of other people. Because sometimes they'll be good and sometimes they'll be bad. And they can change within a moment. Your joy doesn't come from what other people are doing. Your joy doesn't come by how other people are responding to you. Your joy has to come from what is inside of you and what you know that God is wanting to cheer up. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Quit making excuses. He didn't make excuses. He didn't delay. So let me ask you, what are you waiting on? What are you waiting on when God is calling you? I'm telling you, it is time. It is time. Jesus is calling to you today. So Blind Bartimaeus knew he had a problem. We're reviewing your notes now. He wanted to do something about his problem. He knew Jesus could help his problem. He didn't let anybody stop him. And when he was called, Blind Bartimaeus answered the call. Every Sunday, basically, we'll give a call of action. At the end of a service, sometime during a service, whenever, that you'll feel God's calling you. You know you need something in your life. You know that what the preachers talked about, that's me. I need that. I want that. I desire that. But you never answer the call. You never respond to it. And you wonder why you're still in the same situation that you're in. When Blind Bartimaeus heard the call, he answered the call. When he's bringing him to him, come. Now, here's the sixth thing. It's the dentures again, folks. Blind Bartimaeus left his garment behind. This is interesting. It says in verse 30, throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. He threw that cloak. See, what the cloak represented in that day, it was almost like a uniform. It would be one that a beggar would have to say, oh yeah, that's a beggar right there. So I need to help him. I need to do something. That's basically his ID badge there. I'm a beggar. I need help. Help me. This is how I make my living. We've all seen situations, circumstances like that, and we recognize that. But when this man got up, when Jesus called to him, the first thing he did is he threw his cloak aside. His cloak was his link to his past, to what he was. What God was about to do was set him free from his past. See, you need to quit carrying your past around with you. I ask you this almost every other Sunday because I wanted to remind, how many of you got a past? All of us do. All of us have got a past. And if we're not careful, we carry that past around with us. Oh, we may take it off, but we're not throwing it to the side. We're just throwing it over our shoulder. Because if I might need to, I can always put it right back on. I don't have to remember where I left it. No, I got it with me. You got your past? Well, I don't have it on me, but let me just remind you of it real quick. This is what. God doesn't want you living in your past. He wants you to quit carrying it around with you. The Bible says to put aside all those weights that weight us down. And many of you, well, God's forgiven me. Then why don't you leave it on the side of the road? Why don't you put your past behind you? I know what you've been through. I know what God's done in your life. But if you're not careful, you're still allowing your past to define your future. We've got a lot of X's in here. I'm not talking about your marriage. That's not what I'm talking about. Maybe I should say formers. I was this, I was that, but that's the key word. You got to remember what you was, not that. That's not what you are, that's what you was. Yeah, but you know what I went through, and you know the pain I went. Listen, quit rehearsing your pain. Nobody else is talking about it anymore. Why don't you stop talking about it? Because when you talk about it, you're just bringing all those feelings back up. There's one thing, there's a difference between testifying about it and talking about it. Sometimes you're talking about it just because you want to bring it up so everybody can remember what your cloak was. Remember what I went through. Remember what they did to me. Remember how they hurt me. Remember this and remember that. I had somebody the other day, situation that literally happened decades ago. I had forgotten all about it. I'm still trying to remember what it was. And this person came by and said, I want to forgive you for what you did to me. And I'd like, what? And okay. I later found out it was something that they had been carrying around. It really wasn't anything I did. It was somebody in the church did. See, I get blamed for all y'all stupidities because I'm the pastor. And it was something that this person had been carrying around with them for decades because of something that had happened back then. It wasn't hurting that person that had done it. I don't even know what they did. I don't know right or wrong or anything. It definitely wasn't bothering me because I had no idea what it was. But it was bothering them. What are you carrying around? What of that situation, that circumstance of the past, of what somebody did or somebody said or somebody whatever, this and that? Well, why don't you just allow the mercy of God? Why don't you throw that thing to the side and quit carrying it around? Or in other words, as I say, you just need to get a ladder and get over it. Because if we keep carrying that around, it's not hurting anyone but us. I want Cornerstone to be a place where you can leave your past. I want this altar. I visualized this week while I was thinking about this. I'd like to just see a big old pile of cloaks right over here. I'd like to see people come down and just take their coats and just, not their coats, their cloaks, their past, and just, I'd like to fit. And literally, it's spiritually, I can see all the past that have been left down here. Drug addiction and bad marriages and sickness and disease and bitterness and heartache and unforgiveness and greed. And I mean, just go down. There are all kinds of cloaks that are down here. But the key is they've left them down there. Okay, I got to hurry. See, when you come to Cornerstone, we don't see where you were. We see where God wants to take you to where you can be. We want to be a place of possibility. So blind Bartimaeus knew he had a problem. He wanted to do something about that problem. He knew Jesus could help that problem. He didn't let anybody stop him. He came when Jesus called him. He left his garment behind. Number 7, blind Bartimaeus knew what he wanted. Now, up to this time in the whole story, we hadn't talked about anything about his blindness. We just know that Jesus heard his cry. He didn't mention his blindness. He just said, have mercy. Jesus didn't say, hey, blind boy, come over here. He didn't say that. We have no mention of his blindness until he gets up and he comes to Jesus. When he comes to Jesus, verse 51, what do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked. The blind man said, Rabbi, I want to see. What do you want God to do for you? I want him to just bless me. Well, I know that, but you need to learn to be specific in what you want for God. Is it a healing? I want God to heal me. What specifically do you want him to heal you of? I got a long list. Well, then make that list out. I want my kids to, no, begin to think about your kids. You want them to come back to the Lord. You want to be involved in them. You need to see them that way. You need to know what you want for God. The Bible says, ask and you shall receive. Many of us can see physically, but we are spiritually blind. He said, Rabbi, I want to see. Now, here he uses the word rabbi, and the word rabbi means teacher. But here's why I think he called him teacher, because he said, I need you to teach me something. Or let me put it this way, are you willing to admit you don't know everything? Are you willing to say to Jesus, teach me something? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to study to show yourself approved? You want change in your life, but you don't want anybody to teach you about change. You don't like where you're at, but you don't want anybody to show you how to get out of where you're at. I can do this on my own. Well, how's that working for you? Two things I pray for is I pray for revelation and wisdom. I say, oh God, show me where I'm at, and then give me the wisdom to show me to where you want me to be. If you could only see what God has for your life. I don't want to see what others have for my life. I don't want him to see what I have for my life. I want to see what God has for my life. That's why I cry out to him, oh God, open my eyes so I can see. All right, let's review, class. Got your notes there? Hopefully you're ready. There will be a test over this. Blind Bartimaeus knew he had a problem. He wanted to do something about his problem. He knew Jesus could help his problem. He didn't let anybody stop him. He came when Jesus called him. He left his garment behind, and he knew what he wanted. Number 8, don't miss this one. This is the last one. Blind Bartimaeus followed Jesus. Verse 52, go, said Jesus, your faith has healed you. And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. The key to maintaining your spiritual vision is following Jesus. Again, I've said it over, we posted this. Movement is what materializes your miracle. We come each Sunday asking God to open our eyes, but when we return home, we go our own way. We follow our friends, we follow the trends, we follow the media, we follow Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. When are we going to start following Jesus? When we can hear, though, I know what I need to do, I know what I need to do. Okay, that's great. You know what you need. You come to Jesus, I need mercy, I need that. But when are you going to leave following Jesus? When are you going to do something different when you leave this place in following Jesus? Because that's where the miracle begins to happen. Why sit we here till we die? Why stay in the situation that we're in? If we don't do something different, if we don't go a different way, if we don't try something, if we're not going to follow Jesus, it's not going to get any better, friends. It's not going to get any better. And this blind man who had been sitting by the road begging, saying, I'm relying on everybody else, and been in that same way for I don't know how many years. Blind Bartimaeus, at the end of the story where he was sitting begging Jesus, now he is following Jesus, and his life changes. All right, clear your desk. Here's the test for today, class. Blind Bartimaeus knew he had a problem. Do you? He wanted to do something about his problem. Do you? He knew Jesus could help him. Do you? He didn't let anybody stop him. Do you? He came when Jesus called him. Have you? He left his past behind. Have you? He knew what he wanted. Do you? He followed Jesus. Are you?